So tonight at the firehouse, I'm going to make homemade fried ravioli for 10 hungry firefighters. Now this is all the ingredients that you're going to need for the dish tonight, and if you want a full list, check the video description down below. So let's start off by browning 1 pound of ground Italian sausage. Now I like to use this little ground beef spatula, and all it does is it just chops the beef, or in this case the ground pork, up about 6 times every time you mash it down. So if you're interested in saving some time, or you do like to cook a lot of ground items like this, definitely pick one of these things up on Amazon. So after about 5 or 6 minutes, it starts to brown up nicely. So that's when I just kind of ditch the spatula and just start tossing it in the pan. And once it's cooked through and through, take that ground pork, put it in a bowl, and set it to the side so we can turn our attention to the rest of the filling. Now, this filling I'm going to work on is going to be a ricotta Parmesan blend. So I'll take 4 ounces of fresh boar's head Parmesan cheese, and then 16 ounces of this ricotta cheese. Now this is whole milk ricotta, it's not part skim or nothing like that. We want the whole fat, whole flavor, whole everything. So dump 16 ounces of that in, then come on top with this Kingsford Tuscan blend. I like to put about a tablespoon or so of that mix in there, and I'll tell you, that stuff works really well for enhancing the flavor. And I'm actually going to use it a little bit later on in the marinara sauce. So once everything is mixed up, take either a piping bag or a gallon Ziploc bag, they both pretty much work the same, and just start spooning that ricotta mix into the corner of this gallon size Ziploc bag. So once it's all in, go ahead and shake everything down. Again, you want it into the corner, not the whole bottom, because that's going to help you kind of squeeze it out and be able to manage the bag a little bit better later on. So once it's into that corner, get all that air out of there, seal up that zipper, and toss it in the refrigerator so it stays nice and cool while you continue working on the rest. So I like to do a creamy cheese filling, and unfortunately I'm lactose intolerant and can't have mozzarella cheese, but I can have this Cabot pepper jack. Now pepper jack is just a mixture of Monterey Jack with a little bit of red pepper flake, and it's a really nice creamy alternative for those of us that can't have the lactose. So I go ahead and I cut it up into little small bite-sized pieces about like that. Then I'll grab my block of whole milk mozzarella cheese, not part skim, but whole milk, and I'm going to cut it into chunks about the same size as I did that pepper jack. And the reason I'm cutting into those size pieces is because it works really well for the size ravioli that I'm making. So now once our cheese is cut up, go ahead and take 10 eggs, crack them whole, and put them into a big mixing bowl. Now I'm not worried about separating the yolks from the whites at this point. I'm just worried more about not busting the yolk. So once I get all 10 of them cracked in there, now I'll reach in with my hands and I'll separate the yolk from the white until I get all 10 yolks into this smaller bowl. And then I'll take all the leftover whites and I'll use that for breakfast in the morning for myself. Now the reason we were separating those eggs is because we are making the pasta. Now this is homemade pasta. I like to use just the egg yolks for the pasta, and it makes it really, really creamy and rich tasting. So what I'm doing here is taking 4 cups of King Arthur bread flour, and I'm just kind of making a mound with it. So once I get all 4 cups measured out, I'll then take my hand and kind of hollow out the center to where I make almost like a little bowl. I'll pour in those egg yolks, take a fork, start whisking everything up like I would do with scrambled eggs. And then once the eggs are scrambled, I then start working in the bread flour on the edges. Now as you see, I'm not mixing all of it up at once. I'm just slowly grabbing a little bit from the edges and bringing it into the middle. And I'm going to do that until it kind of starts to look like this, where it's not really mixing anymore. It just seems like it's really clumpy. So then at that point, I take my wedding ring off and I just dive right in with my hands and start hand kneading this stuff. Now, as I work it, I'm doing the same thing, just bringing the outside edges into the middle, and I'm making sure that it's not too dry, but I don't want it to be really soupy or wet anymore. So after you keep working it, it should start to look something about like this. Now this is still just a little bit sticky, so what I'm having to do is just take a little bit of that leftover flour that I didn't use and just sprinkle it on. But you can see it's kind of sticking to my fingers right here, and that's not what you want. So just slowly sprinkle in a little bit of flour. Take your time, there's no rush. This is homemade, not fast cooking, and you just want to keep working it just the way you see it here. So I'm grabbing the edges, pulling everything into the middle, just like I do with all of my bread recipes or dough recipes. And that's a good way to get it incorporated nicely. So once everything looks nice and smooth, I form it up into what looks like a little softball. I'll throw it into a greased bowl, set it to the side, and I'll repeat this again. Now, I'm making about 90 to 100 of these raviolis because I want to make sure that everybody has 10 each if they can eat 10. So I will have to double this recipe. So if you're only wanting to cook about 50, then just stick with half of the recipe. So now we break out the big guns. So I'll pull out the KitchenAid stand mixer and put on the attachment that makes the pasta dough. I'm going to take that pasta dough attachment, I'm going to set it to a level 1. I then grab my dough that I wrapped up in saran wrap to make sure that it didn't dry out while I was getting everything prepped. And I cut off about a chunk about yay big. Now you can cut a big piece off if you want to, but if you do, you're going to have to handle a lot of flour at one time. So I recommend just cutting off a piece that would look to be about like maybe 4 ounces of a steak or something of that sort. So now just take your hands, kind of flatten it out a little bit. I'm forming it up in a rectangle shape because I am going to need to start pushing this thing through setting number 1 on this pasta maker. So as you see, as it pushes through, it just kind of flattens everything out. Nothing really looks pretty at this point. It's got ragged edges. Nothing has a great looking shape. And really, I'm not worried about that. What I do want to do though, is I want to get just a little bit of water down on this pasta. And then I'm going to fold it into 3 pieces. It's called a trifold or a window fold. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to run the pasta through that attachment again. And as it squeezes it, it's going to kind of make the dough incorporate back into itself again, if that makes sense. So once I run it through the second time, fold it in half, run it through again a third time, and really after your third time, that should be about all you need to do when it comes to brushing it down with water. So next, I'm going to turn the adjustment to a number 2, and we're just going to start feeding this thing through nice and slowly. And I'm going to work through the numbers on that dial gauge. I'm going to go to number 3 next, and then the 4, and the 5, and then my very last run will be a number 6. Now I don't like to go any higher than a number 6 because it makes the pasta really thin. And what I notice is that I do find the pasta blowing out a little bit too much when I go past that 6. So I keep it right about there, and it keeps all the filling inside that little pocket that I'm going to make here in a minute when I'm parboiling. So once that final run on number 6 is complete, just set the pasta dough to the side, grab out your ball, and you're going to repeat the process until all your pasta dough is rolled out. So I want to show you 2 different ways that you can make these raviolis. Now the first way I'm going to show you is more of a rustic kind of homemade way where you're not trying to make everything look perfect or pretty. You're just making sure that the pasta is flat, that it does have a filling, and the edges all stick to each other. And the second way is I'll show you how to use it with my pasta former. So all I'm doing here, guys, is I'm taking that mozzarella cheese, I lay it down on that pasta sheet. I make sure I have about 2 to 3 inches in between each piece of cheese. I take my little brush with just a tiny bit of water. I'm brushing in between the cheese, all around the outside edges. And what this water is going to do is it's going to soften up that pasta sheet, and it's going to allow it to pretty much glue itself down once you fold it up, or once you fold it over here in just a minute. So then once that water's brushed on, I then come on with the Italian pork, and I just put a little bit of pork down on top of that cheese. And if you wanted to do other ingredients, this would be the time to do it. I know people that have used basil to stuff it. I've seen people do a little bit of a pesto kind of thing, but really it's up to you. But for this, I'm just going to do the mozzarella and sausage. So now we're going to take the edges and we're going to fold it over onto itself. As you see, I'm paying special interest in making sure that the ends are touching each other, because again, that's where that seal is going to happen. You're going to take that little bit of wet edge of that pasta, and once they touch and you give it a little bit of pressure, like you see me pushing down right here, that's what's going to make it kind of glue together, that way it doesn't open up. So once you worked all the way around the edges, take a knife and just cut the ravioli out. So you just cut right down the middle, evenly spaced between the cheese blocks, and that should give you, these little ravioli looking pieces. Now again, this isn't going to be perfect and it doesn't have to be. This is just a rustic way to make ravioli for people who just are more interested in taste than presentation. So now pick the ravioli up with your hands, start in the center where the cheese is, and work your way out to the edge of the ravioli, pressing down and removing the air. And all you're going to do is just going to repeat this process for all this ravioli that you have laid out on your prep table. So now let me show you the fancy way. So take the little ravioli template that I have, spray it with nonstick cooking spray so nothing sticks, lay out a piece of that pasta dough sheet that you just made, and chop off the end just like that. Then you take the little plastic cap, set that down on top, and what that's going to do is it's going to create little pockets for you to put your filling in. So just push it down nice and easy, doesn't have to be hard, but you notice there's 12 little indentions. So you come back through with your piping bag in those 12 indentions, and you just squeeze on that ricotta, Parmesan, Tuscan seasoned blend. And it's just going to be little dollops, which are going to be a little bit bigger than like a standard Hershey Kisses. So once you have all 12 of those down, come back on with your top sheet. Make sure that you stretch the edges all the way over, because as you push this thing down, you want to make sure the edges are touching the edges. And also you can come on with a little bit of water on those edges just like you did before, just to ensure everything sticks, but it's not 100% necessary because of the way this pasta cutter cuts everything. So as you see, I set it down on top. I'm pushing down pretty hard. As I push it down, it is cutting all the way through. So it's cutting, shaping, and sealing at the same time, which is actually pretty nice. So then I just give it one or two more go-overs with my fingers, just making sure that everything is pushed nice and firmly. That way when I go to pull the edges of this pasta off, everything pulls away nicely and you don't have anything spilling or opening up on you. So just one last check, making sure everything is stuck and looks good. I'll pull over a little bit of that bread flour so nothing sticks. I'll flip the little ravioli maker upside down, and with it being properly greased, it falls right out. So then just take a little bit of flour, sprinkle it on top so nothing sticks as I'm pulling everything apart. And as you see, everything worked out great. Nothing really stuck. I don't have anything oozing out. All the seams are sealed, and these things are looking good. I mean, take a look at this thing. Isn't it pretty? And it's tasty too. All right, so into a boiling pot of water goes the raviolis at this point, and all we're gonna do here, guys, is we're gonna parboil. Now, parboil is just a way to kind of pre-cook the pasta before it goes into the deep fryer, and I parboil it for about 3 to 4 minutes just to make sure that it does get fully cooked, because the last thing I want is chewy ravioli that is undercooked. So once those ravioli are in the water boiling, I'll turn my attention to the sauce. So I'll just take 2 jars of this Rayo's marinara sauce. I'll put in 2 tablespoons of that Tuscan seasoning, give it a quick little stir, and just keep the heat on really low. This is just gonna simmer. You really just kind of want it to warm up, and then that's about it. So once my 4 minutes has passed, go ahead and take these ravioli out, put them onto a baking sheet, and you want to let these things cool all the way back down to room temperature before you start the breading process. Now, my favorite way to bread these ravioli is in a 3-step process where I take a little bit of flour that's been seasoned with salt and pepper. I shake them around in that flour while they're still somewhat damp, and then I go right into an egg wash. So that flour is naturally going to stick to the wet ravioli, and then the egg wash is going to pretty much create the glue for those breadcrumbs that you're going to dip them into next. Now, if you want to get fancy with yours and add extra flavor, you can go with an Italian panko breadcrumb, but for me, I just kept it with a plain breadcrumb. Now, I only like to drop about 6 or 7 of these egg washed raviolis into that breadcrumb mixture at a time, because I notice if I do too many, then it gums up the breadcrumbs. So once they're nice and coated, I put them on a baking sheet, and I'll just repeat this process until they're all breaded. So let's go outside and fry these things. Now, I am using peanut oil, and the heat is set to 375 degrees. And what I'll do is I'll put about 10 or 12 of these in a fry basket at once, and I'll just drop them all in. Now, I don't like to overcrowd the basket. I want to make sure they have plenty of room to swim around in that grease and breathe and not stick together. But after, I would say, about 7 or 8 minutes, or when they look nice and brown like this, that's when you want to pull them. I don't have an exact timeline as far as how long these things should cook, but you definitely want to go off of color. So once they look like that, shake off the excess grease. You can hit them with a little bit of salt, and then just repeat the process until all these guys are cooked. So here they are, all fried up, looking golden brown and delicious. So I'll go ahead and plate these things up. I like to throw about 6 or 7 and on the outside edges of that plate. Take a little bit of that red marinara sauce, spoon it right into the middle. That's going to allow us to dip our ravioli into. Now, don't put the sauce on the ravioli because it will get soggy. You want to allow your guests to dip it in as much as they want. So we're going to take this thing over to the table, give our final little shot. And that right there, guys, is how you make fried ravioli for 10 hungry firefighters.